Hello and welcome to Country Life Simple. Apologies for not uploading any videos for the last fortnight maybe. I had no internet for over 10 days. Absolutely no internet. And where I live, the phone reception isn't great. It only gets like 1 bar outside of the house. So really couldn't have uploaded any videos. I didn't actually make any because I was really busy with work as well. So apologies for that. But you get a double Remy today. I'm gonna make two things. I'm gonna make a Rye-Wheat bread in the Thermomix, and I'm gonna make a traditional German Easter bread, I think I would call it. It's a sweet kind of bread you eat around Easter time, just by itself actually. I normally just eat it by itself. It's with marzipan. They are traditionally filled either with nut or marzipan filling. You can get them plain as well. I find them a bit too dry, but we're gonna make those today. So come on and join me. We start with the bread first. So I'm gonna use my Thermomix for this recipe. You don't need a Thermomix. You can just make this in your normal stand mixer. But I do have a colleague who's getting into bread making, and I wanted to show her how to make a bread in the Thermomix. So we start, if you don't have a Thermomix, just use rye flour. I'm just using rye grains and mix them in the Thermomix, 250 grams. There we go. Lid. And I have this 50 seconds on 10. So basically all we have done is just made flour out of the rye grains. So if you don't have a Thermomix, you can use flour. This is not as fine as rye flour. I'll show you. See how this is quite coarse, which is good for this kind of bread. It's sort of a wholemeal, more of a wholemeal kind of bread. But if you want to use normal rye flour, that's totally fine. It will work exactly the same way. Now we're going to add 60 grams of water. This is just cold water. And we're going to warm this up to 37 degrees for about 2 minutes. Oops. So I just added 60 grams of sourdough starter. Unfortunately, I just took my sourdough starter out of the fridge, but that's all right. So I just added that to it. And now I'm gonna mix this up for 30 seconds on 3. So now I'm gonna add, I actually misread the recipe. I should have made that flour and then taken it out, which I didn't do. I added the water and I added the sourdough. It'll be fine. Seriously, it'll be fine. I just didn't really feel like having to use another bowl. So in here I now got the rye grains, which made into like a meal, but it's not very fine. So I am going to add some normal rye flour, 150 grams. See how this is a lot finer. Actually, we'll show you in the bowl in a minute. Still sort of see on the side the other, it's quite coarse, and this is really fine, so that sort of binds it together a bit nicer. Like I said, if you don't have a Thermomix and don't have a mill, you can just use a food blender or something to use rye grains and make them a bit smaller, or you can just use rye flour full stop. That is fine as well. So I added some rye flour. I'm gonna add some sugar, 1 teaspoon of sugar. You can also use honey, golden syrup is quite nice instead as well, whatever you've got on hand. And 1 tablespoon of salt. I really have to label this, otherwise people will think it's sugar. And we add another 600 grams of water. There's my water there. And then we mix this up for 3 minutes at 37 degrees because we want it to be nice and warm so that the sourdough starts to become activated on level 3. Alright, so this has mixed up quite nicely. It's really hard to show you because this is super liquid. But because there's a lot of water in it and because the rye was quite coarse, it will absorb this water. So what we're going to do now, we just let it rise. Put the lid on like this and put this on top of it so that nothing, no flies or anything like that can get in. And then we just let it rest here while I'm making my other dish. So I just want to show you again how I maintain my sourdough starter so I don't need to discard anything. So I just used a fair bit of my sourdough starter, but I still have some left, and I can smell it. It smells quite sour. It needs a bit freshening up. So what I do, I take a clean jar and measure the amount of sourdough I have here. So I've got 150 grams of starter. Now I'm very carefully adding exactly 150 grams of water. And 150 grams of rye flour. Yeah, and I should have taken a bigger jar. I always do that. It's like, oh yeah, this will be fine. No. I should move this into a bigger jar and mix it up. Alright, I got my workbench back in order. I've got my sourdough starter settled in a new jar. So this is a fresh, large jar. And I mixed my sourdough starter in here. Just what I had in that small jar before. This is actually quite a lot of sourdough starter. But I've got a bit of a break from work for 10 days, and I hope I will be making a lot more bread in that time, so I will use it. And the other sourdough starter, it probably has been sitting in the fridge since ever I baked the last bread, which maybe was 2 weeks ago. So yeah, it was quite liquid. You see, this one is, not liquid at all. I'm gonna let this rise and just establish a bit, and then I'm gonna put it back in the fridge. For my Easter bread, this is 450 grams of plain flour, and then I'm gonna add my yeast mixture. So this is 10 grams of yeast, 50 grams of flour, and 250 grams of warm milk. And I mix this all up and just let it sit covered for about half an hour. So I'm going to add this in here. It's nice and bubbly. And this is basically to activate the yeast. So it starts rising, and you can see, hopefully you can see how bubbly this is. See? All right, we're also gonna add 80 grams of soft butter. So I use salted butter because we normally have salted butter, so therefore I don't add any extra salt. If you don't have salted butter and you use just normal butter, then just add just a little bit of salt. Whenever you put something sweet, you also put something salty. And then I'm also adding 50 grams of sugar. And this is a bit clumpy, this sugar, so I gotta be a bit careful. And then I'm gonna mix this all up with the hand mixer. You can use your normal stand mixer, whatever you've got on hand. Once this is all nicely combined, we form it into a little ball and put it in the bowl and leave it for about 30 minutes to rest in a dark covered area. I normally put my stuff in the oven. Obviously the oven is off. Can't have the oven on, but I'm going to just leave this in the cold oven for about 30 minutes. For the filling, I'm going to use 200 grams of marzipan. I bought this marzipan at the shop, at the supermarket. And should have turned the scale on. I'm using the Thermomix. You don't have to use the Thermomix. I just had it out here, so it's handy. Yeah, 200 grams of marzipan. You can make marzipan yourself quite easily, but just to save a little bit of time, I just bought a store-bought one. I also will add 2 egg whites. So the recipe asks for rum. Now I will put the rum in. I was thinking I might put amaretto in, because amaretto is an almond liqueur, but the marzipan is already quite, you know, almondy. So I'm going to put 2 tablespoons of rum. So rum, this is Strohrum. This is an Austrian rum. Yeah, Austria Inlander rum. It's got 80% of alcohol. It smells amazing. I have never actually drunk it, but for baking, it's awesome. Absolutely love that. Cost a fortune here in Australia because of the high tax. I normally bring it home from Germany. And then I'm gonna add some almond flour. 150 grams of almond flour. Oh yeah, this just smells like baking. And then we're gonna mix this all up, and that will be our filling. Like I said, if you prefer nuts or something else, you can do that. I'm looking for the lid, which I misplaced. There it is. But I really like the the marzipan one. This is how it looks like. It's a it's delicious. I can smell that rum. And this is what we're gonna spread on top of the yeast dough soon. I just noticed that I didn't have the camera on, which is a shame, but the dough for the bread actually did touch the top of the lid, so I just mixed it up for 30 seconds, and now I'm gonna add 150 grams of wheat flour, and mix this up for 30 seconds, and then knead it on the dough setting on the Thermomix. Again, if you do this on the stand mixer, you just can do this the normal way. So I added 150 grams of wheat flour, mixed it on level 4 to 5 for about 30 seconds, and then on the dough setting for 1.5 minutes, and then repeated this with another 150 grams. So in total I added 300 grams of wheat flour. Now this will be finished, and I'm gonna put this into two, and see, it's a lot, it's not that liquid anymore. So here I've got two bread tins. Mine are quite small, and this is for like a large 30 centimeter one. These are only about 20. So I'm going to divvy it up into two. Even though this might look quite small, it will rise. I have put this in one of these baked tins before and it really overflowed. So now I've got two, and I'm going to put them in the cold oven and then heat the oven up to 200 degrees and bake for an hour. All the new Thermomixes have a cleaning setting. The old one doesn't. This is the TM31, I think it's called. Had it for, I don't know, 10 or so years. No, actually longer than that. I don't know, 15, 20 years. I normally just put dishwashing detergent in, some water, and then set it on 37 degrees for about 2 minutes on 3 to 4 speed, depending on how much water you put in. You want it to go up to the top, but not obviously come out. And then all I have to do is just rinse it and it's clean. Easy enough. All right, and here is our yeast dough, nicely risen. So I'm gonna put some flour on my silicone sheet. Some people like to do it straight on their countertop. I prefer to do it on a silicone sheet, but that's just me. And we take it out. It feels beautiful, nice and soft. Cover it with a little bit of flour so I can actually flatten it and roll it. And I tell you, I never get anything round, and now where I want a square, I'll probably get it round. Rolling out marzipan is quite hard, so normally I just put some baking paper over it and roll it into the dough, carefully just rolling the marzipan, not trying to actually increase the dough anymore. It is not super evenly spread, but that's okay. Just trying to smooth it out a little bit. Once you're satisfied with this, we use the baking paper later on. We roll this up like this, like a scroll. Carefully to not break it. And then we're going to cut it very carefully in the middle. I'm just going to use one of these because I don't want to destroy my silicone sheet. And then we start braiding, basically just by putting this over and under, just like this. You can do this in 3 strands or just the 2 like I have it. And then I really would like to get this into a round wreath. So I'm going to carefully transfer this onto the baking paper. This is when you need another hand, because it is quite soft, it is quite heavy, so I don't want it to break. I cut these ends off because my piece wasn't all that neat, and that's fine. I'm going to make little sweet rolls out of this. And let it rise for another half hour. And there we are. 2 beautiful rye wheat breads. They're not super high, but you can see if I would have had this in one dish, it would have overflowed. This is, well, I'm not sure. This is a crispy roll. And then this is the Easter wreath. How good does that look? I put a bit of icing sugar and lemon juice mixture over it. And now it's cooling down, and then we're going to try it. Yum. Look how good that looks. Yummy. Soft, but crispy on the outside. Just how we like it. And this is how it is looking like inside. Beautiful. There's, I think on some areas there's a little bit of, well, a lot of marzipan, but it tastes delicious. We just had a piece for afternoon tea. It's beautiful. This is actually the first time I made this, and it's pretty good. Just want to show you how Otto looks like. I'm glad I put him in that bigger glass. See how much he has risen. So yeah, I left him standing there today, and now I'm going to put him in the fridge, and it's ready to use for next time. Looking good, hey?